Hello and welcome to the Hollywood Critics Association's Foundation After Show. Each week on this show, we discuss the latest episode of the Apple TV Plus series based on the beloved science fiction novels by author Isaac Asimov. I'm Jami Philbrick, entertainment journalist and critic for We Live Entertainment and a member of the Hollywood Critics Association. We have a great show for you tonight. We will be having a spoiler-filled discussion of the latest episode of the series, which dropped tonight, entitled Mysteries and Martyrs. But first, allow me to welcome my co-hosts for the show, Yael Tygiel and Nikki Fowler. Hey guys, how are ya?
Hi, good, thanks.
Hi.
All right. This was a great episode tonight. I really enjoyed it. We've got a lot to discuss. So let's jump right in. We'll start with a little bit of a recap. This episode picks up with Salvor, Hugo, and the Anacreans attempting to board a missing Imperial ship called Invictus, also known as the World Killer, which the Anacreons want to use against the Empire. Hugo is lost in space attempting to land, and Salvor soon realizes that the ship is on a timer and will make another jump to parts unknown in the next few hours. Meanwhile, Brother Day is coming to terms with Harry's predictions coming true and losing the religious power of the Zephyr to Halima Ifa. He meets with Ifa, who requests stopping Cleon I's cloning program, which of course Day refuses and instead chooses to walk the great spiral and appeal to the triple goddesses. While Brother Dawn's relationship with Azura grows, he contemplates leaving the Empire. And finally, we catch up with Gail and Harry's consciousness, who explains his true plans while Gail discovers her own true powers. So a lot to talk about this week. Let me start with you, Nikki. What were your thoughts on this episode? What did you enjoy? What didn't you enjoy? What are you excited about talking about?
Oh, it was just so jam-packed. There's so much going on in this episode. I loved the fact that, we got onto this Invictus ship and we're seeing, all the intricacies of how it operates and, how they have to maneuver in there. We lose poor Hugo, which was sad. And
so sad. Love Hugo. R.I.P. Hugo.
Shed a tear. And I love, again, the mental battle between Brother Day and Zephyr Halima with the maiden world. And then also just getting these details into, Harry is engaging with Gail now, and we're finding out more about her mentalic powers. So that was really exciting. It was just a juicy episode.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously for us, for the three of us and others who have been following the show since the beginning, it's exciting for me that it's all coming together, right? We sort of had to put a lot of faith in this series at the beginning, and I feel like it's really coming along. Yael, what were your thoughts on this week's episode?
As we know, I am impatient, so I absolutely loved the reveal. I think Gail and Selden's conversation, we now have a lot of answers, which I am very excited about. The Empire's romance situation, but also the other empires dealing with the maiden world. I'm it's weird how every episode my interest flips, and I feel like I no longer care about them. And right now, Salvor and this ship and that whole thing, I love a heist. I'm very excited about that. So that was really fun. But more, I cared about what was going on with Gail and getting our answers, because we know how impatient I am.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the exciting things I think about the show too, is that, there really are kind of, now we know, sort of three storylines, right? There's obviously the Empire storyline. There's this Gail, whatever, Harry's consciousness, the plan kind of storyline. And then of course, what's happening with Salvor on Terminus. And so, there's a lot for you each week, right? And we get to know these characters, and Salvor is such a badass, and we get to see what she's up to, and then go and see this real conflict between Gail and, whatever's left of Harry. And then really a conflict that's kind of going on with the Empire as well. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Well, it's exciting. Let's unpack a few things here. I wanted to talk to begin with talking about the Empire. And Nikki, you mentioned it. I love the actress that played Zephyr, Aoife. I mean, I thought she is just wonderful and so strong and really holds her own against Brother Day. We also sort of learn a little bit. This was kind of in Brother Dawn's storyline, but we learn that it's not just the clones aren't just replacing once the current dawn goes or current dusk goes on and the new dawn, but there are fully grown clones waiting with the consciousness of, and the memories of the Empire to just kind of take the place if for some reason one of these guys goes rogue, or in the case of Dawn, he's worried that people are going to find out about his brothers really are going to find out about his color blindness and that this is an imperfection in the clones that can't, be tolerated and that he'll be replaced. So I thought that was super interesting and something fun and new to learn that we didn't previously know about the Empire. Nikki, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting. I was concerned that he was just showing her so much, though. He's really sharing. So, yeah, I love that part. And, it's just fun to have all these like extra details of knowing that, there's clones on, on standby, So, yeah.
It's so interesting that you say that you found the like him asking or showing her so much was concerning. I feel like you're totally right. And we got all this information, but I don't I think it would have been much more interesting if she had turned on him. Like it would have been so much more interesting to see that than like he fell in love with her, revealed all this stuff, and then got to explore the world, virtually. So I would have preferred her to not be someone we could trust.
Well, Nikki, what are your thoughts on that sort of budding relationship between Azura and Brother Dawn? What are sort of your thoughts on that? I mean, do you agree with Yael? Do you think that she should have said, "What are you thinking, buddy?" and kind of left the relationship, or do you like where this is going, sort of blossoming this relationship? And I mean, it can't end well, but what do you think?
It was a little boring, the relationship. I just, it would have been more exciting, as Yael said. So that was, a little boring to see the relationship. I love more of the backstory of what's happening with him. But again, I feel he's sharing so much, and it was a little bit of a letdown to see that, he's just kind of, virtually seeing the rest of Trantor. Exciting for him, but as a viewer, it was not that exciting.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I wasn't that bored by the relationship. I mean, it's interesting. I like what sort of came out of that storyline. I don't know, I don't know how much I maybe was bored or not bored in it really, but when we got like good information, like about the clones and how that works, that kind of fed that for me. So I was fine with that. Well, let's talk a little bit about Brother Day. And obviously he was not too happy with Demerzel bowing in the end of the last episode to the Zephyr. Yael, what were your thoughts on sort of that storyline and him really fearing that Harry's prophecy is coming to life?
I mean, I was again, all of the Empire stuff this episode was not my favorite, but I think because of the whole romance going on with Brother Dawn, we see that Harry is pretty much correct. We hear all about these other little imperfections that are happening, but I found the stuff with Zephyr Halima fascinating because she is so great, and so I love that she continues to call him Cleon. I like
yes.
Demerzel was like, no, it's Empire. She's like, no, it's Cleon. So I liked that. But otherwise, this was not my favorite part. Again, this this whole thing was a little bit slow, and I hope that it pays off and turns into something more interesting.
Interesting. Nikki, were you bored by sort of the Empire story in this episode?
No, not so much. I'm still fascinated with Demerzel, and I want to know where her loyalty lies. She's kneel. It's just such a contradiction that she's kneeling and she's serving the imperial system. So there's got to be something else layered in there. It just seems convenient. So that part was kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. And also, I mean, let's be honest, there wasn't a lot of the Empire in this episode. I mean, it wasn't overwhelming, I didn't think.
Right.
I think this is a very, sort of split Salvor Gail episode, right? It's always interesting. I mean, I love Lee Pace, so getting to see him kind of really, and he gets to chew the scenery in this role a lot. So that's pretty exciting. So that was fun to see as well. Well, before we talk about Salvor and everything that was sort of happening on Invictus, let's dig into this Harry's consciousness. And we've talked about this every week on this show. What's the plan? Is this the plan? Are we on the plan? Is the plan happening? And we really found out tonight, like, what the plan is, or somewhat was, what direction it's going in. And so Harry's plan was always to die. He needed to be a martyr. The plan went wrong when Raish fell in love with Gail, and that jeopardized the plan, as she was supposed to be the leader on Terminus. So there's a lot sort of unpacked there. Nikki, let me start with you. What were your thoughts sort of learning from his consciousness what his plan was, what Gail's true role was, and, can the plan still work?
Well, I definitely think the plan can still work. He's definitely, like I said, he's always manipulated things in his own way. It was interesting to find out that he was actually scared of it, worried about his own mortality with this Lethe syndrome he had, and his fear of looking crazy once they got to Terminus. So that was very interesting. Raish and Gail falling in love wasn't a part of the plan. I still feel it can work. Gail's character is this, mathematician genius. So I feel, I always felt like she may be a part of a second foundation, as I mentioned, which is in the book. I still feel it can happen. His plan can still, make fruition.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I thought some of the stuff that he was explaining, like, totally made sense to me. You know what I mean? Like, the way he felt he needed to martyr himself, that, you'd see this sort of sickly man on the planet and it wouldn't kind of, rally the troops, if you will. So like all of that plays into like where it made sense to me, like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, it's a devious plan, make no mistake, but it's still, like it makes sense, which I appreciated that there was a lot of logic to it, I think, when you look in sort of those broad terms. We also discovered in this episode that Gail has a power herself, that maybe was always sort of there and she didn't know. But the way I understood it, and this was my interpretation, and I'd love to hear what you guys think, is that she sort of has this, not that she can see the future, but sort of an instinctual, something that kind of lets her sort of predict the future a little bit. My dog's knocking down my green screen. You can see behind me. While I fix that, why don't you talk a little bit about Gail's powers?
Yeah, so I absolutely loved this part. This is the part of the episode that like really got me excited, because she is figuring it out in front of us, which is really like a fascinating way to show us this, because her power is that she can feel the future. She even says, I can feel the future. I loved that moment, that reveal, and the way that we got to it was such a nice, way to do it on a show like this, where I feel like sometimes we've been very talked to. And so to see it like talked through and see the flashbacks and understand the feeling was fascinating. I think Selden's consciousness is a great way to kill off a character and then keep him on the show, especially when he points out, he says, my death was an essential element to the success of the plan. I think that just really solidified that even though she's not supposed to be there, his plan worked. And
Right.
I think as Nikki said, I think it can still continue to work and it can work out. And I loved this reveal. I loved everything about it. And it made me wonder what her connection to Salvor is, because Salvor also senses the truth, the future, something. There's something there. There's some sort of connection, and it's sci-fi. So, you know, they have the Force.
They have the Force. It's interesting you said that, because it also did cross my mind that they seem to, Gail and Salvor, have some similar aspects in that realm, in the power, you know, in their skill set. So, Nikki, let me ask you about Gail's power. What would you sort of thought about that? And do you think, you know, that it's a huge problem in Harry's plan that she's not on Terminus? Because obviously we know Salvor's got things handled to a certain degree. I mean, how much different do you think it would be if she was there?
That's such a loaded question. There's so many thoughts running through my mind on this. First, I want to go back to Gail, you know, and her character, and, you know, a little bit of the resemblance from the books. You know, she's resembling multiple characters. So she's resembling Gail, and also she's resembling Wanda, who's the granddaughter of Harry Seldon and the daughter of Raish. And Wanda had mentalic power. So we're finding Gail has these powers. And Goyer mentioned in one of the Q&As that some of the characters have this, you know, merged, you know, one or two characters from the book. They're pulling from everywhere. They're pulling from the trilogy and the prelude. So, you know, they're just pulling from everywhere. So you're getting a lot of the book, but it's kind of, you know, kind of jumbled up. So you kind of have to figure it out like a puzzle. So long story short, I feel that Gail, and a lot of fans have said this as well, that Gail may be, you know, the child of Raish. Salvor may be the child of Raish and Gail. So that's something that's been floating around in fan groups. And I could see that because, I mean, everything that we've seen leading up to this, you know, we saw the seeds being, you know, stored on the original slow ship to Terminus. It was kind of vague, but, you know, we're told that, you know, Salvor had, you know, parents, but then there's just too many links of Salvor linking to Raish with the visions and the mentalic powers. I mean, no one else has these powers. So I feel that, you know, she can definitely, you know, the plan can still move forward. You know, Harry's plan can still move forward, but I just feel there's a connection there. There's something going on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I loved the way they sort of revealed it with I'll use, for lack of a better term, kind of flashbacks to the whole series, and seeing these moments and sort of illuminating that those moments were part of her power, right? I thought that was actually really well done from a sort of a production standpoint. Nikki, you brought something up that I'll pose to you, and then Yael, you can jump in as well. Have we seen the last of Raish? I mean, I know he's dead, but this is science fiction. We've already seen several dead characters come back in one form or another. I mean, have we really seen the last of him, do you think?
I think we may see a flashback, but I think, you know, floating out into space with no gear, you know, that kind of equates to not coming back. So I don't feel he's coming back.
But maybe the actor will come back in some flashbacks or some kind of, you know, illuminate some part of his story that we didn't already know.
Yeah.
I tend to think you're probably right, but also on this show, you don't want to count anyone out until they're really out. Yael, what do you think about the idea of Raish making another appearance in some form or another?
So I am a big believer in the sci-fi trope of no body, no death, but we definitely saw a body. So I think there's definitely a death.
Yeah.
I will accept that Raish is dead. That said, we do have Salvor, almost communicating with child Raish. And I assume that means we could have somehow Salvor or Gail communicating with a past Raish. But he is dead. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think we all three agree on that, unfortunately. Well, let's talk about the other sort of element of the episode, which was on Terminus. Well, actually on Invictus, really, above the planet. So kind of this. It's kind of coming to a head, right, between Salvor and Farah. Her plans and Salvor's trying to escape and save everyone. What are some predictions maybe going into the next episode, or just what do you think, sort of how is this going to come to a head? I mean, they are very formidable foes. I'm wondering if maybe at some point a larger enemy appears and they don't have to join forces. Wouldn't that be cool? Nikki, what are your thoughts on sort of the Invictus of it all?
Well, Pharaoh basically wants them to take the ship and crash it into Trantor.
Yep. Destroy the Empire.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen. I feel like, kind of what you said, that something may kind of interfere with all of this. Salvor's really brilliant. I feel that she's going to find a way out. And I don't have a feeling that the Anacreons are going to triumph in this Invictus takeover.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, one would hope, because obviously we're rooting for the Foundation and Salvor and everyone there. But at the same time, I think the show's done a really good job of explaining the Acronons, their gripe, right? Sort of explaining why they're upset with the Empire. And I get it, and it's nice. I always like it. I mean, in science fiction, but in anything really, when, you can sort of, you have to have heroes and you have to have villains, and you're always watching a story from a certain point of view. But if you can have human characters and really humanize those decisions that those characters make, I think it really makes for a fuller emotional ride, if you will. And that's certainly something I think we're getting here. Yael, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I love this whole taking of the ship. I think that Farah is such an interesting foe, especially to see her go against Salvor, because Salvor's so badass. So it's really fun to see them go head to head, and Salvor being their prisoner and still trying to get away and keep herself alive and still do what she's told so she doesn't die. And everything about it is so fun. I think the necessity of the guy to get them into the ship was so yep, I get it. I get why we kept this man alive for a minute. And then Farah's just she doesn't need him anymore. And so I really love how ruthless she is. She has a mission, and she's goal oriented. And it's interesting because, like you said, it makes sense. You understand why.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I thought that was a really cool part of the episode too, is seeing, especially after we lose Hugo, you see it on Salvor's face, and, Farah's just get over it. Come on. And so I don't think that's going to end well between those two, but it would be interesting to see them have to kind of work together for a little bit. We saw that a little bit before in another episode, but that would be super interesting. Well, before we kind of get to our predictions and what we think is going to happen in the next episode, I want to mention something that happened this week. I was just flipping through my YouTube and I came across an old interview that Isaac Asimov did actually on the David Letterman show. It was from 1980, so it wasn't that long before he passed away. It was actually on David Letterman's original morning show, wasn't the late night shows. And Star Wars had just come out. In fact, I think it was actually Empire Strikes Back had just come out. And of course, because of the foundation, all his work, Letterman asked him about, what do you think about Star Wars? I thought this was really interesting. He loved it. He loved it. And the only thing he said was, I can't wait for them to make another. I want them to keep making more and more and more. And the only thing I'm disappointed, I'm paraphrasing, but the only thing I'm disappointed about is that I'm not going to live long enough to see the whole story told. And unfortunately, I had to see the irony in it that he wasn't, depending on when you count the Star Wars story ending, but obviously, it ended with Last Jedi, or with Rise of Skywalker, and he didn't last that long. So I just thought it was really interesting for a guy who really created a lot of the mythology that's used in science fiction and certainly was used in Star Wars, to love the Star Wars stuff. And Nikki, what do you think about that? Does that surprise you from what you know about him, that he would have been so into George Lucas's work?
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me. His daughter had mentioned that he, said that if anyone were to adapt his work for film, he knew changes were going to be made. And, Star Wars, obviously, Asimov is the king of, the Galactic Empire, the founder. So, all the similarities with Star Wars, I mean, I would get a kick out of that, so he is flattered, and then, just enjoys the story, and expected that, this isn't mirroring his work, but it's a celebration of it and, pulling from it, and as well as this show Foundation, so I think you would like this show.
Yeah. Well, let me pose that to Yael. I mean, do you think he would approve of this? Would he enjoy sort of the direction they're taking it in, and the source, really embracing the source material?
I mean, I think that a sci-fi fan's a sci-fi fan. If you like sci-fi, then yeah, you're going to enjoy what's out there. And I think that, from what I know about what was in the novels and what we're watching, there are some great updates to it. I think, changing some characters to women, right. This is a universe. There are people in it. There are women people in the universe. I think he would enjoy it. I also think that, as we know, our empire, our clones are not in the books. And I think he would get a kick out of, because as much as I've been like, wow, they were boring this episode, the idea of clones is fascinating. The idea of these clones that have been ruling for however long is really interesting. And I think that he would enjoy it. It's an original way to tell his story.
Yeah, I would love to know what he thinks about the clones and everything that's not from, his books that was sort of incorporated. Yeah, that would be really interesting. Well, let's do a couple predictions for next week, or what we hope we'll see. I mean, I guess I'll just say I'd love to see. Well, obviously, I want to know what's going to happen on the Invictus, right? Are the Acronon's going to be able to go through their plan? Is Salvor going to stop them? What is going to happen there? I can't wait to find out. And we know that Brother Day is going to go on this journey. I don't really know what it means. They seem to all know what he was talking about when he said, I'm going to go on the path to the goddesses or whatever. Right. So I can't wait to find out what that's all about. And then I guess just, kind of finding out now that we know what Harry's plan is, and we know that Gail has this power. Where does that go? And is she gonna, continue with whatever his original plan was, or are we on a new plan? I mean, we don't know. So, Nikki, what are you hoping to discover next week?
Well, I can't wait to see Brother Day's journey. Like I mentioned, I love the Maiden World. I love, the whole story behind the goddesses. So I just can't wait to see all of that. And looking forward to see what obviously happens with Gail and Harry. And, I still feel that she is a part of the Second Foundation. Looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Brother Dawn. And, even though it was not as exciting in certain elements of that story, still interesting. And, Demerzel, and seeing, this whole loyalty is brought up for a reason. So I really can't wait to see what happens with that. And then obviously the Invictus ship, how are they going to get out of this? Or, and you mentioned too, Yael mentioned as far as rooting for Farah, you kind of, myself, I kind of, wasn't really rooting for it at first, but I mean, the Imperials like destroyed her planet, and I had to ask myself, why am I not rooting for her? But obviously it's because she's taking hostages and that's not a cool thing. So yeah, looking forward to seeing more of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's one of the things the show's done really well is sort of, you can understand why they're doing the things. You may not agree with it, but it sort of does humanize the characters. Yael, what are you looking forward to or hoping that you discover next week?
Yeah, so this, Gails Powers, if I can feel the future, I want more of that. I want more of Salvor and Farah. I want that to get to a head. I want one of them to survive. And at this point, I don't know which one. And I want to get back to my interest in Empire's storyline. Because I remember at the beginning, that was the storyline I was most excited about. And now I am not. So I would like to get back to being very excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think all of us want a little bit more from the Empire storyline, and hopefully we'll get it with the next episode. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. We thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video, and tune in to HCA's Foundation After Show every Friday at 12:01 a.m. Pacific Time and 3:01 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.
Bye.